What if the best investment available to you right now isn't in the stock market, not in real estate, not in crypto, not in a business you've been meaning to start for 3 years? Not in gold or bonds or anything a financial advisor has ever drawn on a whiteboard for you? What if it's something you've already been offered repeatedly and declined, not because you evaluated it and said no, but because nobody framed it as an investment at all? What if the reason you haven't made it is the same reason most people haven't, not lack of access, not lack of money, lack of awareness that the opportunity existed in the language you understand? The language of returns, this is that conversation. What does a 50% return actually mean? When someone tells you an investment returned 50%, you pay attention, you lean in, you ask questions. You want to know how to get in. A 50% return is the kind of number that makes headlines, that gets whispered about at dinners, that makes people feel like they missed something. The S&P 500 has averaged roughly 10% annually over the last century. A good year in real estate might return 12 to 15% on a leveraged position. Venture capital, the kind regular people don't have access to, occasionally returns 30, 40, 50% on a single bet. These are the numbers people talk about. Now ask yourself this. What would you do with an investment that returned 50% guaranteed, not projected, not historically averaged? Guaranteed before taxes, before inflation adjustments, before fees. You would put everything you could into it. You would tell people about it. You would restructure your life around the access to it. Here is the question that changes everything. What if you already have access to it and you're leaving it on the table every single month? What is a 401k match actually? Your employer offers to match your 401k contributions up to a certain percentage of your salary. The most common structure is 50 cents for every dollar you contribute, up to 6% of your salary. Some employers match dollar for dollar. Some match up to 4%, some match up to 8%. The average employer match in America is roughly 4.5% of salary. If you earn $60,000 a year and your employer matches 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of your salary, here is what that means in plain numbers. You contribute $3,600 a year, which is 6% of your salary. Your employer adds $1,800. You have $5,400 in your retirement account before the market has done anything. Your $3,600 became $5,400 the moment it landed. That is a 50% return. Instantaneous. Before any market movement, before any compounding, before a single year has passed. Now here is the question you should be sitting with. Are you contributing enough to capture the full match? Because if you're not, you are declining a guaranteed 50% return on money you were already going to invest. You are leaving real dollars on the table every single paycheck, not theoretical dollars. Not projected dollars, actual employer dollars that were earmarked for you that you walked past. Why does something this obvious get ignored? This is the question that matters more than the math. The math is simple, the behavior is not. If 50% guaranteed returns were available in the stock market, there would be lines, there would be news segments. There would be entire industries built around helping you access it. The 401k match exists quietly inside a HR benefits document that arrives during onboarding week, which is the week you are most overwhelmed, most distracted, and least equipped to make financial decisions that will affect the next 40 years of your life. You are learning where the bathrooms are. You are figuring out the internal calendar system. You are meeting 30 people whose names you will spend 3 months learning. And someone places in front of you a 40-page benefits document and says, pick your health plan, choose your retirement contribution percentage, and sign here. Most people default. They pick whatever is already selected. They choose the minimum. They choose 0 because 0 is the path of least resistance when your brain is at capacity and retirement is 40 years away, and 40 years is not a real place. Here is the question this raises. How many other financial decisions in your life have you made by default rather than by design? Because the 401k match is one missed opportunity with a clear dollar amount attached to it. The habit of defaulting is harder to price but far more expensive over time. What does leaving the match uncaptured actually cost? Let's make it specific because specific is what makes this real. You are 27, you earn $65,000. Your employer matches 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of your salary. You are currently contributing 3% to your 401k, which means you are capturing half the match. You are leaving $975 a year on the table, not somewhere abstract. On the table. Money your employer set aside for you that you did not pick up, $975 a year feels manageable to ignore. It does not feel catastrophic. This is exactly why it gets ignored. Now here is the question. What does $975 a year become over 35 years in a retirement account averaging 7% annual returns? $130,000. You left $130,000 on the table not by making a bad investment, not by picking the wrong fund, not by bad timing or bad luck, by not adjusting a percentage on a form. $130,000 from a 3% contribution rate adjustment. That is the number. That is what the default costs when the default runs for 35 years, and that is just the match. That doesn't include the compounding on the additional contributions you would have made on your own side of the equation. The full number, your contributions plus the match plus the compounding on both, is significantly larger. Now here is the harder question. If you knew this at 27, would you have adjusted the percentage? Of course you would. Everyone says of course. The percentage would have changed the same week. But most people don't know this at 27 because nobody sat them down and walked them through it the way a 50% return in the stock market would have been walked through. With urgency, with specificity. With the sense that this is an opportunity that will not stay open forever. The match stays open, the years do not. But what about people who don't have a match? This is the right question to ask, and the answer matters. Not every employer offers a match. Roughly 20% of Americans with access to a 401k work for employers who offer no match at all. If that's you, the guaranteed 50% return isn't available in this exact form. And that's a real disadvantage worth acknowledging honestly. But here is what remains true regardless of the match. The 401k itself, the tax structure of it, is still an investment that outperforms its equivalent in a taxable account on the same returns. Here is why. When you contribute to a traditional 401k, you contribute pre-tax dollars. Money that would have gone to the government goes to your account instead. If you're in the 22% federal tax bracket, and you contribute $500 a month to your 401k, you're not reducing your take-home pay by $500. You're reducing it by roughly $390 because the other $110 would have gone to taxes anyway. You are investing $500 and it costs you $390. That is a structural advantage that exists before the market does anything. And if your employer offers a Roth 401k option, the math runs in the opposite direction but with equal power. You contribute after-tax dollars, the growth is tax-free, and every dollar you pull out in retirement arrives without the government's hand in it. The question this raises is not which account is better. That depends on your tax situation now versus your projected tax situation later. The question is whether you are using the tax structure that is available to you as aggressively as the structure allows. Most people aren't. Most people are investing in a way that is convenient rather than a way that is optimized. Convenience and optimization are not the same thing, and the gap between them over 30 years has a specific dollar amount attached to it. What about the Roth IRA? If the 401k match is the most ignored investment in America, the Roth IRA is the most underused. Here is what a Roth IRA is. It is a retirement account you open independently, outside of your employer, funded with after-tax dollars that grows completely tax-free. You pay taxes on the money going in. You pay nothing on the money coming out, not on the contributions, not on the decades of growth, not on the compounding that turned $6,000 a year into $400,000 over 30 years. Nothing. The government offers this. It is legal. It is available to anyone under a certain income threshold. The 2024 contribution limit is $7,000 a year for people under 50. That is $583 a month. Here is the question: why doesn't everyone max this out? The reasons are familiar. It doesn't feel urgent. The benefit is 30 years away. $583 a month feels large when your rent is $1,400 and your car payment is $380 and you haven't been on a trip in 14 months. And the account doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send you a reminder. It doesn't show up in a push notification telling you that you left $7,000 of tax-free growth opportunity on the table this year. It just closes on December 31st, quietly, without drama. And the year is gone and the contribution limit resets and you cannot go back. You cannot contribute to last year's Roth IRA. That window closes and it closes permanently. Every year you undercontribute is a year you cannot recover. Now here is the specific question. If someone told you that you could invest $7,000 this year, and that every dollar of growth on that $7,000 for the next 35 years would be tax-free, would you find the $7,000? Most people say yes. Most people don't find it. The gap between what people would do with full information and what they actually do is the entire story of personal finance. The information is not the missing variable. The urgency is, what does the Roth IRA actually produce? You are 25, you open a Roth IRA, you contribute $500 a month, $6,000 a year, you invest in a total market index fund, you do not touch it. You do not adjust it, you do not panic when it drops, and you do not celebrate when it climbs. You just continue. At 35, you have contributed $60,000, and your account is worth approximately $104,000 at a 7% average annual return. You have $44,000 in tax-free growth sitting in an account that will continue to compound for another 30 years. At 45, contributions of $120,000. Account value approximately $330,000. The growth is now $210,000 more than you put in, and none of it, not a dollar, will be taxed when you withdraw it in retirement. At 55, contributions of $180,000. Account value approximately $830,000. The compounding has been running for 30 years and it is now the primary contributor. The market is adding more each year than you are. At 65, contributions of $240,000. Account value approximately $1,900,000. $1,900,000. Tax-free, from $500 a month starting at 25. And here is the question that should be landing right now. What would that money be worth in a taxable account? If you withdraw $1,900,000 from a taxable brokerage account in retirement and you're in the 22% bracket, you owe taxes on the gains. The gains on $1,900,000 with $240,000 in contributions are roughly $1,660,000. At 15% long-term capital gains tax, which is the rate for most retirees in that range, you owe $249,000. The Roth saved you $249,000 in taxes, $250,000, not by being smarter, not by picking better investments. By using the account structure the government made available and that most people ignore because the benefit is invisible until it isn't. What about HSAs? Here is the investment almost nobody frames as an investment. A health savings account, an HSA, is available to anyone enrolled in a high-deductible health plan. The contribution limit for 2024 is $4,150 for individuals, $8,300 for families. And here is what makes it unlike any other account in existence. It is triple tax advantaged. You contribute pre-tax dollars, the money grows tax-free, and you withdraw it tax-free for qualified medical expenses. No other account in the American tax code offers all three simultaneously. Not the 401k, not the Roth IRA, not any account available to ordinary people. The question most people never ask is this: what if you don't spend the HSA on medical expenses? After age 65, you can withdraw from an HSA for any reason. If you withdraw for non-medical expenses after 65, you pay ordinary income tax. That makes it function exactly like a traditional 401k. Except you got all the other advantages along the way. The optimal strategy, and this is the strategy almost nobody executes, is to pay for current medical expenses out of pocket, save the receipts, let the HSA grow tax-free for decades. And then either reimburse yourself later for past expenses tax-free or withdraw in retirement, and pay only ordinary income tax. The HSA becomes a stealth retirement account, one with better tax treatment than anything else available. Here is the question this raises. Do you have access to a high-deductible health plan, and are you using the HSA that comes with it as aggressively as the account allows? Most people use the HSA as a medical checking account. They deposit and withdraw in the same year. They leave nothing to grow. They treat a triple tax-advantaged investment vehicle like a reimbursement form. The person who maxes their HSA from 25 to 65 and invests every dollar in an index fund inside the account has a second retirement account worth hundreds of thousands of dollars that arrived with 3 tax advantages and almost no attention from the financial media. Why don't people talk about this? This is the question underneath all the other questions. The investments that outperform are not secrets. They are in the IRS tax code. They are in your HR benefits document. They are available to anyone with a W-2 and the willingness to read one more page of something boring. They don't get talked about for a specific reason. They are not exciting, there is no story arc. There is no volatility, there is no moment of triumph you can screenshot and share. The 401k match arrives quietly in your account twice a month, like a utility payment in reverse. The Roth IRA grows in the background of an app you check less as you get older. The HSA sits in an account most people forget they have. The investments that get talked about are the ones with drama. The crypto that went up 400% and then down 80%. The stock that tripled in 6 months. The real estate deal that turned $40,000 into $200,000. The drama is the content. The drama is what gets shared. The boring outperformer doesn't get shared because there is nothing to share in the moment. The sharing happens at 65 when the account reads a number that doesn't look like it came from something boring, but it did. It came from the same $500 a month, the same automatic transfer, the same account that nobody at dinner was talking about, growing quietly in the right structure for 40 years. So what do you do with this? Here is the final question, not a rhetorical one, a practical one. What is the first thing you do with this information, not eventually? Not after you've done more research, not when the timing feels right. The timing never feels right. The timing is a story the present self tells to protect itself from the discipline the future self needs. The first thing is the audit. You open your benefits portal this week, not this month, this week, and you find 3 numbers. Your current 401k contribution percentage, your employer match percentage. The threshold you need to hit to capture the full match. You compare them. If they don't match, you change the percentage before you close the tab. That is the entire action. One number changed in one form. The compounding runs for 40 years on the back of that one number. The second thing is the Roth IRA. If you don't have one and you're under the income limit, you open one, you link it to your checking account. You set an automatic contribution for the day after your paycheck lands. You pick a total market index fund, you close the app, you don't check it for 30 days. The third thing is the HSA if you have access to a high deductible plan. You find out what your employer contributes. You find out what the maximum is, you calculate the gap. You decide whether the high deductible plan makes sense for your specific health situation. If it does, you max the HSA and you invest the balance in the index fund option inside the account. You stop using it as a checking account. These 3 things are not complex. They are not exciting. They do not require a financial advisor, a spreadsheet with 14 tabs, or a weekend of research. They require an afternoon of attention and the willingness to change 3 numbers in 3 forms. The return on that afternoon, measured at 65, is not a number that sounds like it came from an afternoon. It sounds like it came from something much larger. A strategy, a discipline. A decades-long commitment. It did come from a discipline. The discipline of doing the boring thing when the boring thing was available, and not waiting for something more interesting to come along. Something more interesting always comes along. Something more interesting is always less certain, less structural, and less guaranteed than the 50% return that was sitting in your HR portal the whole time. The machine you're not using. You have been offered a machine. Multiple machines, actually, each one with its own tax advantage, each one with its own compounding timeline. Each one available to you right now today with the income you currently earn in the life you are currently living. You did not need a windfall to access them. You did not need a high income or a financial advisor or a moment of inspiration. You needed an HR document and the willingness to read it with the same attention you give to things that feel urgent. The 401k match, the Roth IRA, the HSA, 3 accounts, 3 tax structures, 3 machines that run quietly, automatically, and compoundingly for as long as you feed them. The people who end up with real money at 65 are not mostly the people who found the best stock or timed the market or built the right business. They are mostly the people who used the structures that were available consistently for a long time without stopping. They used the boring machine, the one nobody talks about at dinner. The one that doesn't make headlines. The one that outperforms almost everything, not because it is clever, but because it is structural and consistent and tax-advantaged in ways that quietly, invisibly, over decades, produce a number that looks like luck and is actually just discipline running inside the right container. The machine is open, the contribution limit resets every January, the match is waiting, the tax advantage is sitting in an account you might not have looked at in months. The question is not whether this works. It works. The question is whether you will do the one boring thing this week that the future version of you will be unable to go back and do for you. You already know the answer. You've known it for a while. The knowing was never the problem.